Truck designers have always faced the same problem: how to carry more cargo without exceeding length limits. A logical solution was to make the cab smaller, to free up more space for cargo. But some went much further and literally placed the cab under the trailer. At first glance, it looked like an almost perfect solution. More cargo meant more profit. But in reality, it turned out to be a dead end. Today, we'll look at how cab under trucks came to be and why this idea never caught on. But somewhat unexpectedly, the appearance of trucks with ultra-low cabins was not driven by profit, but by the Cold War. In the early 1960s, the United States was looking for a way to make its nuclear forces mobile and not depend on fixed silo launch systems. For the Minuteman missile, in 1962, Boeing, Cessna, and GMC developed a special transporter called the Transporter Erector Loader with an extremely low cab. This layout made it possible to move the missile on public roads without exceeding size limits. That meant it could operate without police escort and without special permits. The tractor unit itself was developed by engineers at GMC. It used a V-type 12-cylinder gasoline engine with an output of 275 horsepower. The trailer, in turn, was designed by Boeing and Cessna. It featured a complex hydraulic system that allowed the missile to be raised into a vertical position and placed into a launch silo. However, the Transporter Erector Loader did not see widespread use in the military. Despite its clear advantages, the vehicle turned out to be too complex and too specialized, even for military applications. However, the idea of a tractor with the cab placed under the trailer did not go unnoticed by civilian manufacturers. The first production truck with this layout was the Büssing Supercargo Dachlaster. The fact that Büssing became the pioneer is not surprising. As early as 1951, the company introduced trucks with the index U from the word Unterflur, meaning underfloor. This indicated that the engine was mounted not at the front, as usual, but under the frame. Such a layout was not entirely unique. For example, in city buses, engines were often placed between the axles. The Hungarian Icarus is a well-known example. But for trucks, this solution remained rare and unconventional. The main problem was packaging. A conventional inline diesel engine simply would not fit under the floor because it was too tall. To solve this, Büssing used so-called horizontal engines. In essence, these were standard inline engines laid on their side, almost parallel to the ground. To properly distribute the load, 2 steering axles were installed at the front. This not only compensated for weight distribution, but also improved maneuverability. The engine itself was placed under the cargo platform and connected to an Allison automatic transmission, which transmitted power to the rear axle. The suspension was pneumatic, with adjustable ride height. This layout had clear advantages. The cab floor became completely flat, and heat and noise from the engine were largely kept out. The center of gravity was lower, which improved stability. Maintenance was also simplified. With the vehicle over a service pit, most components were easily accessible. At the same time, there were drawbacks. The engine was exposed to dirt, water, and debris from the road, which forced engineers to develop a protective cover. A potential customer appeared quite quickly. Volkswagen planned to order 50 units for its factories. However, the deal never went beyond negotiations. The issue was not only the design. The Dachlaster appeared at a very unfortunate moment. At that time, the freight industry was rapidly shifting to standardized containers, 20 and 40 feet. The industry was changing, and no one wanted to take risks by investing in such a radical solution. In practice, the project simply arrived at the wrong time. And in 1971, after Büssing was acquired by MAN, the story of these unusual trucks came to an end. But the idea of such trucks did not disappear. In the 1970s, the United States had strict limits on the length of truck combinations, which is why cab-over trucks became widely used. They allowed operators to make the most efficient use of the permitted length. At Strick Trailers, a company specializing in trailer production, engineers decided to go even further. They effectively removed the tractor as a separate unit and redistributed all available space in favor of a larger trailer, while still staying within legal limits. The driver's cab was placed under the trailer, ahead of the front axle. It was so compact that it resembled a race car cockpit more than a conventional truck cab. The project was called Cab Under, and was promoted as an economically efficient solution. Thanks to the increased cargo volume, it was expected to pay for itself in about 8 months, while also offering reasonable fuel efficiency, around 30 liters per 100 kilometers. The vehicle was certified, and on paper it looked convincing, about 10% more expensive than a conventional truck combination, but capable of carrying up to 20% more cargo. At the same time, the design immediately raised safety concerns. A cab positioned under the trailer left the driver with almost no protection in a serious crash, and trucking unions reacted very cautiously to the concept. The decisive blow came from a different direction. Company executives later acknowledged that the demonstration of the vehicle at the Capitol may have influenced the adoption of the Surface Transportation Assistance Act of 1982, which removed length restrictions on truck combinations. In effect, by promoting its own idea, the company helped accelerate a law that made the concept unnecessary. After that, operators could simply use conventional trucks without any compromises. As a result, the project never entered production. Only 2 prototypes were built, and both eventually ended up in private collections. Strick Trailers, meanwhile, continued to operate successfully in its core business. If in the United States length restrictions on truck combinations had been removed by the early 1980s, in Europe they remained strict. It was under these conditions that the German engineer and entrepreneur Manfred Steinwinter saw an opportunity to develop the cab under concept. To implement the project, a separate company was created with support from Daimler-Benz. The prototype truck combination, called Supercargo 20.40, was presented in 1983 at the exhibition in Hanover. Steinwinter promoted the idea of modular transport with a low loading height. Different configurations were considered with 2, 3, and 4 axles, a wide range of engines, and even a version of this layout for a double-decker bus. The tractor had a height of just 1,170 millimeters. A V8 engine from Mercedes-Benz, with an output of over 700 horsepower, was mounted in the chassis behind the cab, which made it possible to create a completely flat floor inside. The cab included everything needed for long-distance driving: 2 Recaro seats, a sleeping area between them, a wardrobe, a hot plate, and a refrigerator. In practice, along with the unusual layout, serious drawbacks appeared. During testing, problems with engine overheating, handling, and visibility were identified. Additional issues with reliability were also found, as plastic body components cracked from ordinary road debris. After a total of only about 3,000 miles, Daimler-Benz withdrew from further involvement, considering the project unpromising. The situation was ultimately changed by new European regulations. Instead of strict overall length limits, the rules began to consider maneuverability and vehicle geometry, which allowed conventional tractors with sleeper cabs to meet the requirements. Under these conditions, Supercargo lost its main advantage. The project never entered production. The only prototype built has survived to this day, although it is not in the best condition. Despite the fact that such solutions did not succeed in mass production, this type of layout is still used when solving narrow tasks that conventional vehicles cannot handle. One such example is a project by the German company Colonia Spezialfahrzeuge, which specialized in transporting oversized cargo. Even with dedicated trailers, they still face problems when dealing with very long loads. To transport aluminum profiles up to 55 meters in length, a vehicle with a minimal overall combination length was required. As a result, it was effectively built from scratch. A retired man tractor with an Unterflur layout was used as the base, meaning the engine was already positioned under the frame. The standard cab was completely removed, and in its place, they installed the body of a 1981 Ford Granada wagon, combined with the front section from a Mercedes-Benz T1. The interior was also modified for long-distance operation, with more comfortable seats installed and a sleeping area created in place of the rear seats and cargo space. The vehicle was named Schnibelmobile, after its driver, who covered more than 500,000 kilometers with it. At the same time, he noted the low level of comfort and the constant attention the vehicle attracted on the road. In the end, this unusual tractor remained in service for many years before being retired. Today, it is stored in one of the company's workshops, where it has been preserved as part of a future museum. The irony is that an idea that was considered a dead end for decades is now starting to look viable again. With the development of autonomous technologies, the cab itself is no longer a mandatory element. When the driver is no longer needed in the traditional sense, the layout of the tractor begins to be reconsidered, and the under-trailer configuration starts to look rational again, as a way to gain space and improve efficiency. For now, these are mostly isolated experiments, such as concepts from Volvo in the early 2000s, rather than a widespread trend. But the idea itself no longer looks exotic. There's also a separate field where a similar approach has long been used in practice. This refers to airport equipment. Tractors used in airports are designed to be as compact as possible, with a low cab and a forward seating position, in essence, solving the same problem of efficient use of space. These are not direct descendants of Cab Under, but the logic behind them is the same. In this sense, the whole story looks different. These trucks did not disappear. They simply did not fit the conditions of their time.